G'day everybody, it's Peps, and today I have for you the Sydney Swans 2022 season preview. Will it be finally the time for the Swans to glide themselves into the top four? Or will they be sitting at the pond watching other teams to premiership success? I can't answer that question for you. So I've reached out to the beautiful northern states and got in contact with Hugh Robertson. You might know him from The Raw, but more importantly, he's going to give you the ins and outs, the nitty-gritty of the Swans. Hugh, welcome to Lace Out.
Thank you, Peps. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited for this season. I bought my tickets for round one just the other day, and I am counting down the days.
Well, I can tell you now, I was fortunate enough to go and watch your mob live last year, and it happened to be a game against Richmond at the MCG, where you decimated them. Now,
that's one of my favourite games for the last few years. That was a beautiful thing to watch.
It was a beautiful thing. I even took my daughter to that. And being a Melbourne supporter, that was when lockdown finally finished here in Melbourne. We were like, we're going to go watch the footy. It was a beautiful day, and you smashed them. And then I felt sorry for you in a way because whether it was injury, form factor, COVID, I don't know what, but we just weren't able to maintain that form for the end of the year because you would have given it a major shake if you had continued at that level for the remainder of what happened in 2021.
Absolutely.
So from your perspective, like, what are the hopes, what are the dreams for your mob this year? What can you tell us about the Swans and your outlook on them for the upcoming season?
Well, I reckon really top four should be the expectation for everybody inside and outside the club. So we finished just outside the four last year on percentage.
Yep.
And we dropped 3 games to teams that we absolutely should have beaten. And if we'd won that, I think we would have finished second. So this year, and our draw's not too bad this year as well. So there's absolutely no reason why, if we tighten up a bit and win those games that we should, a few more games into the young kids and a bit more maturity and hopefully a bit of a sting from losing that final against GWS in that absolute heartbreaker, will, get a bit of fire up them and inspire them to greater heights this year.
What concerns me a bit about your mob is there is so much talent that's young right now.
Yeah.
Yet if I have a look at names, and I'm going to just throw some out at you, Franklin, Kennedy, Sinclair, Dane Rampy, Tom Hickey, Sam Reid. I can even go down, if I want to, as far as Naismith, Parker, and Fox. They're your 29 and aboves, which is sort of that, okay, we need to start thinking about what's going. That's a core group of around about, I reckon, 10 to 12 right there. But here, if I go the other end of the scale, I could pick out names such as Goulden, Logan McDonald, Braden Campbell, Chad Warner, Dylan Stevens, James Rowbottom. So even though you're going to lose what's at the top, you've got some really good stuff sitting at the bottom just to flourish under
the young core coming through is extraordinary. I did a quick count before, and there's 17 kids, 25 and under at the start of the season, who are, who have 20 games, 50 games, 70 games, who are starting to play some serious footy and can be the core of the team for the next 6, 7, 8 years. It's a very exciting bunch. And that's even before you look at the draftees from last year, who all have, as every draftee does, lots of people saying good things about them. But it's exciting.
And you mentioned people getting games into them. There's a couple of these names that just jumped out, and because we're in Melbourne, we're obviously focused on our teams. We don't see Sydney as much as, but I see a name like Ryan Clark, 67 games. Where did that come from? Or Ollie Florent. Yeah, we know he's been around for a while, but he's only a couple from 100. Will Hayward is 89 already. Even someone like Tom McCartan, who you wouldn't think, okay, how many has he played away? He's at 70 odd, and Nick Blakey's at 54.
Yeah.
So you have got those, they're young, but you've been able to get games into them. And where you're being a little bit different, let's just say a North Melbourne, is I mentioned earlier that top age talent has been able to protect them whilst you get those games into them, where other teams, and mine included over many, many years, haven't had them. So we've had to throw them through the balls.
Absolutely.
Your mentality has been, we're not going to do that. We'll play them when they're ready.
Play them when they're ready, but they've been ready at a very young age. And a lot of these guys have played a lot of those games together over the last 4 or 5 years. There were a couple that weren't great where we finished bottom 4 2 years in a row. But now you're starting to see the sort of chemistry of the team. It was so much fun watching them last year, and there's a bit of energy about them in a very un-Swans way. You know, everybody thinks of the Swans as being that sort of hard-nosed, contested footy team of the mid-2000s, and that's a reputation that has carried us for a long time. But we've got some flair. We've got some serious skills.
Oh, you've got some zhuzh.
Yeah,
don't worry
absolutely.
about that. You've got the zhuzh.
And they're having a great time. They're loving playing with each other, and they just look like they're having a blast.
Well, you consider someone like Tom Papley, who 2 years ago wanted to leave.
Yeah.
And now he's running around going, have a look at me, dinner's on.
Yeah.
He's loving his footy up there in Sydney.
And I think it's a classic Swans thing as well, because he was unhappy, you know, things weren't going well, but had a couple of years at the bottom of the ladder. And I think, you know, COVID was probably a factor in that. But the coaching team sort of pulled him in and said, look, you are a serious player. You're going to be one of the leaders of this club for a long time. We want you to be one of the leaders of this very young forward line. Go and teach the kids what you're doing. And I reckon that responsibility, he's absolutely loving it. And you watch the way he gets around the kids like Sam Wicks, Errol Goulden, how much fun he and Nick Blakey have all the time. There's a great vibe about them, and it's a lot of fun to watch. He and Will Hayward as well have the best relationship. They just look like they're having a blast.
Well, you've got a blast. Like, how can you not get excited? You've got the seventh youngest list, if that makes sense. Sorry, seventh oldest list. But that's only 24.7. But even from the game's perspective, 70.4. So I was looking at a different stat. So you've got a nice age window, but you've got a nice number of games. Now, mind you, if you take out Kennedy and you take out Franklin from that, it would probably drop a couple of points, which is almost even better to a degree because it means that you've got a really nice mix. The other clubs are either really too top-heavy, Geelong, or you got other clubs that are too young, as an example. You've really got a nice evenness. So if you do fall off the top, you've got that underneath. Too many other clubs over the years have really topped up, or we're going to get rid of all our oldies, go really young, and just get smashed.
Yeah,
so you're going to get smashed if you're old and smashed if you're young. I don't know what's in the water up there with Horse, but he just happens to just keep getting the best out of your mob year after year after year. I think from everybody that we look at, he is very well respected. Everybody would love to have a Horse Longmire, and when he was playing, I didn't expect him to be, and I will say this now, a better coach than he was a footballer. And that's a big thing because he was a
handy footballer.
Player. He was very, very handy as well too. So looking at it this year, I got to ask the question, Franklin, second last year of his mega deal contract.
Yep.
It is the second last year?
It might be the last year.
Might be the last year, so I could be wrong there. He has been sensational for that club. He's been, I'd even say he's more of a Sydney player than he's a Hawthorn player now. And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
How much of an impact has this guy had over just the whole game up there in Sydney and bringing people through the gates? But more importantly, how he's just brought the reputation of the club as well too, because he should have pinched a couple of extra flags as well.
Absolutely. No, he's been massive. I mean, I've been a Swans fan for 25 years, and the difference in the way that the team is talked about since he arrived has been really exciting. And it's the difference between just sort of being glad to be there and actually expecting to win, which is not something that I think the Sydney Aussie Rules fraternity community ever had about them before.
Oh, well, let's say it right now. The Sydney full stop love a winner.
Absolutely.
They love a winner. And when you're winning, they're grinning. And when they're not, you can see the tumbleweeds going through the stands.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
But I mean, like, that place is heaving. When Franklin's on song and, it's a big game, it's an extraordinary place to be. It's not the MCG, and I don't know that we'll ever have that sort of, dyed in the wool, absolutely rabid kind of support. Interesting, like that Richmond game, the South Melbourne supporters were louder, even though there was only 10,000 of them, were louder than the 30,000 you get at the SCG most of the time. But it's happening, and it's so much of it is to do with him. And I think, talking about expectations around the rest of the competition, I think, again, the Swans have gone from being everybody's second team to actually everybody hating us. And I don't mind that.
I don't hate you.
I think
there's other teams that I don't like.
Yeah.
That might rhyme with Messenden or Mollingwood or Mitchmond. There's just, if you can sort of figure that out.
Cryptic.
We love footy full stop, but when you're in the heartland, it sort of happens.
Yeah.
But there's just so much respect for the Swans because I know that we look back and go, how do you do it year after year after year after year? They've spoken about like the Perth Wildcats over in the NBL and how many years they've been in the finals. I think they've only missed the finals like 2 or 3 times in the club's history. From the Swans' perspective, if you don't make finals, like how? How did that happen?
But
if it does,
even when
it
we
comes
don't
back
make
the next
finals, exactly. Even when we don't make finals, we do it aggressively. There's none of this milling about at 10th or 12th for 5 years and hoping that the rebound will come naturally. It's we're going to suck for 2 years, but then we're going to get some good kids and bounce back up, and we'll be back at the pointy end before you know it.
Well, how does a team lose their first 6 games of the year and still make finals?
Yeah,
right? There's something. There's a never die attitude about them. I've got to ask you about 2, and look, they've been going around for quite a while. One of them, just explain to me what this guy means to the Swans and Callum Mills.
Mills is, I think, in many ways a poster boy for football in New South Wales because he's a local product. We've watched him come through. He's always been a little bit undersized, and we were all very worried that he was just going to get smashed around. But watching him mature year after year, and step into the void in many ways that Jared McVeigh left, not just positionally because he was coming off that half-back flank, but I think sort of spiritually and emotionally. If you read the stuff when Josh Kennedy was talking about him standing down as captain, he went to Longmire and said, Callum Mills is ready. He's ready to be captain. And, he's 24. And that's pretty young for a club where there's no shortage of leadership. But he's clearly ready. And it's interesting because, we always thought that Heaney was going to be the guy. And I thought he was going to be the next captain for sure. And Heaney is a wonderful player, and I love watching him. But there's something about the kind of quiet determination of Callum Mills. It reminds me a bit of Paul Kelly. Not so much in the
and that's a
the
big
playing
call.
side. Yeah, absolutely. But just in that, he would never say more than 20 words, but you knew that every time he'd go out, he'd crack in as hard as he could.
Yep.
And you would never had any doubts about his ability or his leadership or his sort of will. And that's, it's high praise. It's a beautiful thing to see.
But the poor kid, unfortunately, and I say kid, but you know what I mean, but the poor guy, probably the last couple of years hasn't had the greatest run with injuries. So just when he thinks he gets over one, something else pops up, something else. Once he gets going, he is just one of the most reliable running around for your group, and not even for your group, in the league. Like if you're a coach, I want Callum Mills on my team because you just know what you're going to get.
Absolutely. He was so good in that little passage last year. I mean, he was in the top handful of players in the comp, I reckon, in the sort of middle of the season last year before he got knocked down a little bit.
Tell me about the other guy. You mentioned him a moment ago, Isaac Heaney, like another local boy. There was obviously, they're pulling him through their academy, etc. But please to say it for what it is. Like, okay, you need as much help as you can get up there. Right? And I don't have any to call up because if you go to Adelaide, it costs a lot less than it does the cost to live in Melbourne. So what? They should get. I don't think you were using the cola for what it was. I don't care what Eddie said. You need it. You need it. But this is a guy that you're going to keep because for all the stableness that you're going to have with Mills, this guy's the flash. Like,
absolutely.
Where Mills is the steak, this guy's the sizzle. He is just. I love watching this guy. And like I said, the game I watched last year, he was just gorgeous. Gorgeous to watch.
He's extraordinary.
I don't want to get that wrong anyway. From the way he plays his football.
He's extraordinary. And another guy who we really have only seen glimpses of because of injury. If he actually gets a full season at it without a little niggling something or, he's had ankle injuries, he's had various shoulder injuries. If he gets a proper run at it for a whole season, he's spectacular. He's one of the few players, I think, in the entire competition who has the combination of ball winning ability, but then his vertical ability is extraordinary. And you look at guys like, I don't know, he's not quite the same, but if you look at like Pendlebury or Bontempelli, the guys who can go from the midfield to the forwards and have a huge impact, they've been doing it for a long time and are very good at it, but they can't jump. They can't jump like he can. He's got the most incredible vertical leap. And when he's on song, and you saw it a bit last year, when he's on song, he's spectacular. It's amazing.
Well, with those two guys that you mentioned a moment ago, they're pushing 190 plus. He's only 184. So he's not tall. So he's losing a couple of inches on him, but he has got a vertical leap. Like I remember watching him at a game at the MCG probably 2-3 years ago. And I think he sat on Jesse Hogan's shoulders that day.
The one in the back pocket. Yeah,
you know the one. Everybody seems to win Mark of the Year against us.
Yeah.
But he's a serious player. And you can just see he just needs a bird. Like he's all Australian caliber. He's just got to get his body right and have that consistency as well too. But I've got to ask you about one guy who I don't know what you're going to do with him. So you might have an insight for me. Paddy McCartan.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think he's definitely a project player, and it's such a Swans thing to do to pick him up and try to figure out what to do with him. Honestly, at the moment, I don't quite know how he fits in, and I suspect that he'll probably be made to work for it, as Longmire does with everybody. But I do love the thought of the McCartan brothers running around in the same back line for the next few years. He's definitely, I mean, we've lacked a big body defender since Heath Grundy retired.
Yep.
And I think occasionally when we come up against teams with the real big key forwards, you think of Charlie Dixon, Harry Mackay, Hawkins,
Cameron.
Yeah.
Even if you can even say Ben Brown, Tom McDonald, but they're just
Absolutely.
tall. They're tall and they've got a bit of size about them. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But we've been playing for years. We've been playing Dane Rampy on them, who's given up, 15, 20, 30 centimetres every single time. Tom McCartan's come along and he's a superb player, and I love watching him down back. But, somebody with a bit more bulk on them would be, I think, is sort of the one thing that we're missing. Lewis Melican was going to be that guy, but he hasn't quite risen to the level that I think people wanted him to. Yeah, he shows glimpses, and I do love him. I've got a lot of time for him, but he hasn't quite cracked it. So maybe it'll be a horses for courses type thing where you're only bringing Paddy in for 8 to 10 games a year when you really need him against the Gorillas. But I don't know. I think he was playing really well in the twos last year, and everybody spoke very highly about what he was doing down there. So I think give him another season to get confident and to get right, and fingers crossed, no more head knocks.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The concussion issues we've spoken about.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I say we've spoken about, the football community for many, many years has spoken about Paddy McCartan and a responsible thing. He's playing himself as a backman where he's actually going to be putting the knee into somebody else rather than the other way around. It could actually be the Sydney version of Liam Jones without the COVID injection. Because if you think about Liam Jones, he was a forward, goes to Carlton. He was almost all-Australian squad at one stage.
Yeah.
Just how well he... Could you... Like, Paddy McCartan, if anybody doesn't know, this guy's 194 and 94 kegs. He's a big unit height-wise, a big unit body-wise. If you're a full forward and you're walking down and you're seeing that, it doesn't matter what your skill level is. That's somebody to worry about. You're probably not going to want a one-on-one with this bloke. He's just going to say, look, all he has to do is punch. The pressure's not on him as much to kick the scores because we know forwards are where the pressure. This might be another one of those genius things that the Swans have done that you just sit back and why didn't we take a punt on this guy?
Well, the guys that I mentioned before, Heath Grundy and Ted Richards, both started their careers as forwards. And then, Teddy came over from Essendon, Reg came over and he had one game where he kicked 3 or 4 goals. And then Ruse and Longmire looked at them and said, no, you're defenders, get back down there. And then they locked down that back line for 10 years.
And I can tell you that I had a chance to interview Ted Richards on the Lace Out Chat With series, and you can find that in our Chat With series collection if you desire on the Lace Out podcast. But, he was awesome. And he said the same thing. It was just like, you know what? I looked at it and went, okay, well, I've normally played forward, but I'll go back. And the back line is awesome because you can see the game in front of you. You're able to adjust You can adjust to your player. One person who adjusts better than anybody I've seen from a long, long time, besides Jakey Lever, is he just reads it like a book. But that guy that you've got going, the good old number, Mr. Rampy. Sorry, I've forgotten. Mr. Rampy.
24.
So what's he looking at? He's looking at probably, he'd be 189. I actually thought he was shorter than that. 189 and 9.
It's the hair. It's very tall.
It might be the hair. he looks short and always seems to be 10 centimetres shorter than his opponent.
Yeah.
He never gets beaten. Like, this guy is an absolute – he is a gun. Like, any club would want him. Is he the backline leader down there?
Oh,
with him
absolutely.
and Lloyd as well.
Yeah. And he has been for several years and really came out of nowhere. You know, famously was playing in the local comp up here when he got drafted, and nobody really thought he was going to be much. And he's just grown and grown and grown.
It was pick 37 in the rookie draft. They're the ones that we sit there and go, oh, how did we miss that one?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that he hasn't got more All-Australians under his belt, because you look at the regards that people put him under. I thought he would have had a couple more than just the one that he's got. I know he's made the squad as well, but squads are nothing.
Well, I tell you what, you get him not having to play on the big gorillas again and let him do that sort of third man up, halfback marshalling, and then start some of those rebounds. I think he's going to become a very, very damaging player this year if he doesn't have to do those lockdown roles. That could be very special.
So for the Swans to make that jump, and funny enough when we say jump, because a jump for you guys is from bottom four to top four.
Yeah.
Most teams' jump is like bottom to top of the bottom 8. In some cases, it's just getting it. But for the Swans, we know you spend a lot of time in the top 8. Where can you see the improvement, and what's the danger for you guys this year?
So I think the improvement and the danger are two sides of the same coin, which is the youth and the energy and enthusiasm. If those kids that we were talking about before, the guys under 25, if they can make the next step up and really start taking over games, then that's top 4 easy. If they played last year and above, spectacular. But, you know, I think a lot of teams will have spent some more time doing more work against the Swans and looking at more in the video room. There's always the chance that you have, you know, second-year blues or third-year blues, or that things just don't quite click the way that they did last year, which was an incredible and magical year. And I think you saw a bit of it, you know, the sort of lack of maturity just came through occasionally at bad times. So there was the loss to GWS in the final where we just couldn't kick that final goal despite, 8 shots on goal, 10 shots on goal.
I think he kicked, 2-6 in the last quarter or something.
Something like
and
that.
you were peppering those goals.
I still haven't been able to rewatch it. It just makes me too sad. But then you look at 3 of our losses last year. We lost to St Kilda by 29 points, lost to Hawthorn by 38 points at a time when Hawthorn were not troubling anybody, and we lost to Gold Coast by 40 points. Like, you know, we just can't do that. And I feel like that's a sort of, you know, getting more experienced in this competition, getting better at turning up every single week, regardless of who the opposition is, not taking teams like that for granted, but showing up and saying, no, we've got this. We're going to beat these guys, and we're going to do it properly. We're not banking on the 4 points before we've even got off the bus.
You said it perfectly a moment ago. It is a double-edged sword. Your double-edged sword is the fact that you've only got 13 players who have played more than 100 games.
Yeah. And half of them aren't even in the best 22 anymore.
You pump another 2 seasons into those kids? My goodness gracious. Like, the word dynasty we keep talking about with other clubs, and we're not going to mention anyone in particular, go D's. But you can just see it where a certain club, they had Cochin, Prestia, Martin, they had Boston in there, they had Asprey, they had all these guys, Grimes, all coming through together.
Yeah.
Another team, Salem, Tracker, Oliver, Viney, Arms, all coming through together. Oh, look at this mob, Warner, Goulden, Stevens, Haywood. You know, you can hear what I'm saying here. There is so much. It may not happen overnight, but I think it will actually happen. So
the window is wide open. The next,
it's
the
a
next
big
5
window.
or 6 years are very exciting.
A big window. Like some people think that they've got a window. The only window they're looking through is at the play school window, the round window. I think you've got a genuine window, and it may not be this year, but clubs need to start getting worried about because even though you got your top end talent, Franklin, Kennedy, Parker, and Rampy, probably who will eventually fold in the next couple of years, There's so much coming through.
Absolutely.
You have the luxury then to top up because you've done the hard yards with your drafting as well. You're in a cracking spot. How can you not be excited, Hugh?
Oh, I am very excited.
So what's the feeling within the Sydney community at the moment? Obviously, practice games are coming through, and we're going to see with that. Is there who's lighting it up at the moment on the track? I know everybody's burning it up on the track. They're setting their PBs, etc. But what have you heard? Under the radar that a lot of us may not have heard so far. Who's the excitement machine?
Well, I mean, you've probably heard it, but I mean, the exciting thing is that Buddy's playing a preseason game for the first time, possibly in his entire career, which suggests to me that he is absolutely humming along, which is a rare and exciting sight. I'm really excited, and I hope we get some games out of him this year, about Braden Campbell. So he was Errol Goulden's best mate, came through and played a few games last year and was looking good before he got struck down with injury and didn't really feature in the back half. But the raps that people have on him from junior footy coming through, best kick in the competition, smart kid, quick, can win his own ball. I think he could be a real player. And the other one who I love is Justin McInerney, who's had a couple of great years. And I reckon with Jordan Dawson going, he's the obvious person to slip into that role. That sort of halfback wing, can run forward, can kick goals. He had a good couple of years. He got nominated for the Rising Star in both of his first two seasons. But if he can take that next step, I think he could be something special.
Is George Hewitt going to be a loss for your mob?
Yeah, I think he will be. I mean, like I was saying before, everybody thinks of the Swans as being the Brett Kirk team of the mid-2000s. But our contested ball for the last few years has actually been pretty ordinary. We've been in the bottom half for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. And Hewitt's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. Very underrated player. I think Carlton absolutely got a steal. And I was very sad to see him go. So we really need a couple of players to come through and to start picking up the slack there. Kennedy's not getting any younger. Parker's still in there, but also, I mean, he's only 29, but still, you need people to start coming through. Mills has shown he can do it. Ollie Florence shown it at patches. Papley loves getting in there and throwing what weight he has around. But I much prefer him on a half forward where he can go forward and kick some goals. So I'm interested to see, you want Chad Warner cracking in there. James Bell, I think, has shown flashes, slightly taller, but, he's now 23 and I think is ready to start crashing into some packs and going and digging the ball out. So, yeah, we've been able to still win games and still kick goals without being an elite contested ball side. But I would like us to be a bit closer to the middle of the pack because I think so much of our defence is based on pressure up the ground, and that's what allows McCartan, Mills, Dane Rampy, Aaliyah before that to be able to drift over and intercept.
Yep.
But if you're losing every single contested ball or 9 out of 10, that ball's coming in.
You don't have the time.
Much. Exactly.
Yep.
You don't have the time. You can't zone off. You can't do anything. You're just constantly under pressure.
And you can absorb that for a little bit, but if it's constantly
absolutely.
coming
the damn
in,
wall's going to break. Yeah,
it will break. And the thing is, it might not break until halfway through a third quarter. It might not break until halfway through the last quarter. But when it breaks, it breaks. And as we know, for whatever reason, momentum is really dangerous in football at the moment. And once teams get it, it is hard to stop.
You saw your D's win the granny last year in 5 minutes. They just ripped apart that third quarter. It was extraordinary.
Just to clarify it there for you, it was 19 minutes from the third quarter. If anybody wants to review the DVD, which I might do after this, but no, exactly right. It's once it bursts, it's just so hard to stop. And the thing is that you've got so many. What I love about your forward line, I will all say, is that yes, you've got Buddy, but we know Buddy's getting on, but you're still somebody that you have to worry. Have got Logan McDonald. Future to step straight in. You've got Heaney down there. You've got Papley down there. You've got Florida. You've got options. Teams could dream to have this many options. You even got Kennedy still running around at the age of 432.
Yeah.
You still have to worry about him. Luke Parker, yeah, he played in the black and white days. I think he played in their first flag for the Swans. he is still someone you have to worry about. So you have to still worry about the old, but you've got the new as well too. It's exciting times. So if you had to sort of, get the magnetic ladder out and put them someplace this year, where do you see the Swans finishing? And regardless if it's top four, bottom four, it's up to you. Where do you see them finishing at the end of, let's just say, the home and away season?
I reckon they can push for top four. I did a couple of ladder predictors in preparation for this, and I had them shaking out of that third. And that I felt I wasn't being overly generous. I was giving some home teams some advantage. I was trying to be sensible about it and not just be a one-eyed supporter. But I came out with third a couple of times. And I reckon, based on last year, that's not an outlandish prediction. I think they should be going for a prelim final, honestly. I think if they'd beaten GWS last year, they would have won the next game.
Who would they have played? If they played GWS, they would have played...
Oh, God, who was it?
Geelong?
I think it was Geelong.
Yeah, I think Geelong played GWS and smashed them. And then
and GWS just looked absolutely exhausted and they just couldn't do it. Yeah, it was Geelong. And I reckon we would have done all right against Geelong. We beat
And then who would you have played after Geelong?
Then it would have been, so Geelong went through and played Melbourne. So it may have ended
And
there.
how would you have gone against them?
Well, we played them last year and only lost by 9 points. And
I remember
took
that game.
Took it right up to them.
It wasn't a great game to watch that one, let's be honest with it.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that you've got there, you're constantly there. There is no reason why you can't. And once again, you get another 22 games into these young kids. Anything can happen. And once you get to finals, anything can happen. You get to top four, you can really believe that you can make something.
Absolutely. I think they showed last year that they can win free-flowing, high-scoring games, which is something we've never been particularly good at. But they also won some arm wrestles. They won some real grinds against, solid contested ball teams. And if we can just, improve a bit of that to take it up to the Melbournes and, the Geelongs and those sorts of teams who are always going to bash you around in the middle, Port as well, Doggies as well. I think if the kids can come through and start getting a bit of that, then there's no one we can't beat.
Hey, Peter Laddams has joined you. This is the last guy that I'll ask you about. You've brought him in.
Yeah.
How is he going to change up the team, or how is he going to make an impact for you guys this year?
Well, I'm very excited about him. I mean, Horse has always wanted to play tall. I think he likes coaching and playing tall sides. But our guys just get injured all the time, whether it's going back to Tippett, Sam Reid, Sam Naismith has just done his ACL again. So not his ACL, did his ACL last year. They just announced that he's out for the rest of the year. They're just going to sit him and put him in cotton wool. Sam Naismith. They just announced last week they're putting him in cotton wool for the rest of the year to let him get right. So, and Hickey was extraordinary last year, but God knows those knees are holding on by.
Yes.
I don't think it's even a thread. I think he's out of thread. So if we can play Hickey and Laddams together, Hickey showed a lot of movement around the ground, which I was very surprised by. Very mobile bloke. And then if Laddams can be a bit of that sort of big bopper and do a bit more of the grunt work, I think it's really exciting. Because he is, we had glimpses from Hayden McLean had a really good year last year. Joel Amati came in for a couple of games and had an impact. But I think they're both still 22 and 23, I think.
Yeah.
And not as big as they're going to get. So if Laddams can come in and be that second serious ruckman, which I think Horse has always wanted to play, I think he could have a huge impact.
And he's come under Dixon. Sorry. He's learned under Dixon. When you're doing these things late at night, it can really come out the wrong way. But he's done his apprenticeship under Dixon. Now he's going to go under Hickey. So he's learning from a couple of the best. He's only 24.
And
he's
he had
played
that
32
year.
games. Like he's done his semi-apprenticeship, but he's only going to get better under these guys. And like you said, if you go to the double duo, that means that Hickey, I remember that game against Richmond. I keep going back to it. Hickey, I think he kicked 2 out of your first 3 goals in that game as well too. Once again, you throw a big guy forward, you have to adjust. You have to adjust to that. So that's going to be such a benefit for you guys. And you're right. To bring him in, Horse only brings people in he sees something in.
Absolutely.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
Well, he's definitely seen something in him too. So Time to put the old agates on the chopping board here, Hugh, because we're going to take our lens off just the Sydney Swans and we're going to have a look from a league perspective. And before I do that, actually, no, we'll do this now. Who is going to be, in your eyes, Premier for 2022?
Look, I think the Dogs are going to do it this year.
Okay.
I thought they looked really good at times last year. I think for a lot of the year they were the team to beat. You know, them and Melbourne were clearly the two all season. But I feel like the Dogs, you know, they're still pretty young. Losing last year will have fired them up. Beveridge, I'm sure. I don't know if you've seen the Chopper Reed moustache that he's rocking at the moment, but something's happening there. He's feeling it, and I reckon they could go one better this year.
Interesting. Nice pick. All right. What about from a Coleman medal perspective?
Look, as much as this pains me to say it, I have a feeling it might be Harry Mackay. You know, Carlton are going to get better this year. And if he's getting delivery from the Sam Walshes of the world, I think he's going to kick some bags.
So he kicked 60-odd last year.
Yeah, he wasn't far off it. I think he ended up third.
No, he won it last year.
Oh, he did too.
He did. Yeah, he won it last year.
Of course.
Yeah, Tomahawk comes second, and I think Fritchie came third or whatever. But yeah, it's awesome. So you're going the big fella, Harry Mackay?
I reckon he can do it again. I don't see that there's too many other teams who funnel so much of their attack through one player as Coleman do. And maybe he'll get robbed of a few by some of those mids getting better and some of the kids getting better. But
Charlie Curnow's back. If Charlie Curnow gets fit, then they've got a couple of options. But you're right. If you can find teams that have a funnel that they have to go down, Carlton have to go to him.
Yeah.
I think he might be injured for the first couple. I could be wrong with that. That might affect it. But once again, being a bottom team like Carlton are, they're going to have a couple of double ups against the lower ends. He should be able to dominate against that as well.
And he's proven he can do it too. He's proven he can kick 6s and 7s and 8s, and that's what you need. Get a few of those on the board, and you can't be caught. And
he goes straight. So he's a straight line runner.
Yeah,
he can go at angles if he needs to, and he can get his own ground ball. So for a guy that's 195 plus.
Yeah, he's a fair player.
He's a fair player. What about from a Brownlow perspective? I know this is coming up. It's come up a few times where Brownlow's Brownlow because it's a mid award. I rather like the MVP Coach Award.
Yeah.
Your perspective. Who's sort of catching your eye at the moment?
I feel like there's going to be a very sort of semi-tragic and semi-poetic end to the Brownlow this year. I think Jack Steele's going to win it in a St Kilda team that's not going to make the finals. I think he's going to continue that long tradition of inspirational St Kilda leaders in disappointing St Kilda teams. And, God love them, but it's just not going to happen for them this year. They're trying really hard, but I don't think it's going to happen.
If only that ball bounced for Milne, we wouldn't be talking like this about St Kilda ever again.
The whole narrative. Yeah.
Their whole narrative changes. Exactly right. Nothing's ever happened to us. Do you remember back to 2010 how good we were when we won that flag against Collingwood? No.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not going to occur. So Jack Steele to take it out, but in a very disappointing St Kilda team.
Yep.
I am a little bit concerned about St Kilda, I must admit.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Who's going to be the breakout star for the Swans? Who is somebody that people may not know about, but by the end of the season, they're going to come back and go, listen, shit, I should have actually listened to Hugh. He knows what he's talking about.
So I reckon the two, I was talking about Justin McInerney earlier. I think he could make the leap to serious player in the competition.
Yep.
But the one that I'm really interested to see how he goes is Dylan Stephens. So he was in the same, he's been around for a couple of years, hasn't quite been able to make his own role in the team. But Horse likes him. He's apparently training the house down, as everybody is over summer. But I get the sense that they might have figured out what to do with him. And I think he could have a real impact. They talk a lot about his endurance and his running. Everybody loves his kicking. I reckon it's time. He's had a couple of years there. He could be the guy that sort of takes that leap into a serious player.
And who gets the tap on the shoulder from Horse at the end of the year? Who's going to be the breakdown? Who's on their last legs?
I hate having to think of.
Everybody hates this question, but unfortunately, you can talk about the good stuff, but there is somebody that you have to that at the end of the year too. I'm sorry.
Look, I am worried about Tom Hickey. I'm just worried about those knees. I just don't know how much longer they can go. And last year was such a a miraculous and charmed run. But I mean, the only players that I think are in serious danger, if we're talking about end of career stuff, aren't in the best 22. I think the one who's in real trouble is Sam Reid, which pains me to say because I've been a big fan of his for a long time, and when he's on, it's one of the most beautiful things in the world. But he's a bit like his brother, they just can't get on the park. And Reid, I think, is now, Laddams has come over. Joel Amarty's come through. Hayden McLean's come through. I think if you're looking at that, second tall forward / pinch hit in the ruck, and he's 30 or 31. So, I mean, he's not even that old. But, if you were looking at list spots, you'd start to think, well, maybe that's one that we could free up and use it on somebody else.
Yeah, he is look, totally same sort of question, but I have to ask about these two. What about, we've spoken about Buddy, so we won't mention him because we know that he might go another. It depends on how this year goes. If he kicks his 1,000th and he goes, everything works, you get the flag, he might go, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
But what about two people that I have to ask, Luke Parker and Josh Kennedy? They're obviously getting towards a twilight. Could you see either of those two? Will it depend on what's coming through if those two continue or not?
Oh, look, I think it's too early this year. I mean, Joey's 33. He'll turn 34 this year. I think he's got this year probably another. He's still playing very well. He's still at a very high level. And I think what he offers in terms of leadership, I think ideally what you'd want would be able to move him out of the nitty-gritty and to do what we did with Kieran Jack and Jared McVeigh, which is sort of move them a bit to the side, funnel less of the game plan through them, but still have them there as leadership and on field. Parker's 29. He won another Best and Fairest last year. I think he's coming into the peak of his powers. We think of him as an old player because he started playing at 19. He played in the 2012 Grand Final. And he has taken a lot of punishment. But he seems to be totally up for it and loving life. I think there was a bit of scuttlebutt last year when there was the contract extension.
Yep.
Might he go? Might he not? Nobody quite knew what was going on with that because the Swans you never get a single whiff of anything out of.
Nothing sneaks through the cracks with your mob.
Some friends of mine on Twitter call it Pyongyang on Moore Park because it's such a secretive regime. You just never hear anything.
Nothing at all gets through, do they?
But Parker, even if people come through, I mean, he's still doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the middle. But even if some kids come through and push him out of the centre square, you could very easily play him as a half forward for 3 or 4 years. And I reckon he could kick 30, 40 goals a year. He's so strong. He's so good overhead. He's such a great competitor. I reckon if you stuck him at a forward pocket and just let him do whatever he felt like doing, I think you'd have a fun couple of years of him just smashing into some poor halfbacks and making people wish that they weren't down there.
Now, the thing that makes me laugh is, and sorry, I shouldn't, when I say laugh, it's just I'm a bit stunned by this. Since joining Sydney from Hawthorn, Josh Kennedy has played 20-plus games every single season except for 2.
Yeah.
One of those was 19, and then there was the 2020 season where he got injured. How reliable is this bloke? You think, all right, he'd be not in and out, but you miss the odd game here. He doesn't miss games. He plays continuous seasons. He's just dominated for many, many years. He's either gonna go, great guns, or that's it. Something
Absolutely,
you won't see him.
And not only that, but I think he's only been finished outside the top 5 in the BNF once. And I think it was that year when he got injured in 2020. I think maybe last year he came 6th. But those are the only 2 times that he's done it. So he's just such a consistently wonderful player. And I still have memories of that 2016 final series where he was just extraordinary. And the grand final where if we'd won, he would have won the Norm Smith for sure.
He had Norm. He did have Norm.
I reckon he had a pretty good claim for it even in the losing team. But unless your name's Chris Judd, you don't get that. So he's...
Or Nathan Buckley.
Well, true, yeah. He's wonderful. I love him. He's everything that I love about the Swans. He's hard, he's earnest, he's tough. He's never been a dirty player or even had a whiff of scandal or anything about him. I don't think anybody has a bad word to say about him. I don't know how you could say a bad word about him.
Every club's got that bloke. Everybody wishes every every male football follower, he's the type of guy you love your daughter to come home with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be sensational. And every guy, mums would love their daughter to come home with as well too.
Yeah.
Rightio. Now, before we wrap this one up, Hugh, people are sitting here right now and they're going, geez, I tell you what, I know my Sydney. This guy's an absolute jet. Like, he knows his stuff. I want to get more Hugh Robertson in my life. Where are they going to be able to discover you? I know they're going to be able to find you on the Raw.
Yeah.
Where can they, during the 2022 season, find or read or listen to you more about the Swans and your observations on them?
Honestly, it's mostly just on Twitter, where I spend a lot of time yelling at every single game that we play. I would love to write more and to comment more on the Swans, but I feel like I'm too close to it. I just get like, if we lose a game, that GWS final we lost last year, I was like in bed for 2 days. And that's not conducive to print deadlines and to, getting that hot take out there first if you need to spend 2 days in bed. When we lost in 2016 to the Giants, I was honestly sick for a week. I went to bed for a week and I didn't get up. So I'm not a great person.
Just say it how it is. You've got to love the wins and feel the pain with the losses. Everybody wants to hear that. And I think that's the thing is that that's the brilliant thing about speaking to people like we've been doing these season previews, collaborating with experts on their teams, because you guys know the teams better than I do, full stop, all right, outside of my own. I love the passion, and I want people who listen to this going, I want to get more of that through the year. So don't stop writing. Don't stop talking. And whatever you do, don't stop tweeting, because that's some of the funniest stuff people can do and interact with you as games go on as well too. So don't stop, as Journey said, don't stop believing, especially in the Swans as well too. Listeners, that there is your 2022 season preview. Brought to you by the superstar, Hugh Robertson. I'll tell you what, when I reached out, you were like, get me on board. I want to have a chat about a club that's so passionate and so close to my heart, and I can't thank you enough. But more importantly, there's just one question I have to ask you, Hugh, and it's simply this. Hugh Robertson, co-host of the Sydney Swans 2022 season preview. How do you want your footy?
Lace out.
There you go, listeners. Have a great night. Hugh, you are an absolute superstar. Good luck, Swans. Keeping you in the 8. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Lace Out. Head over to iTunes and Spotify to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. And remember, join us every single Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, on our Facebook page with yours truly, Christopher Pepper, and the co-host with the most, Jamie Wallis, giving you your footy how you want it. Lace out.